I am Dave Luskin. I'm the bike fitter for DL Multisports, and I'm making a semi-short video detailing the process that we will go through if you come to us for a bike fit. The specific process is called the FIST process, and that is short for the Fit Institute of Slow Twitch. FIST is the original tri-bike fitting protocol. It was developed by the man Dan Emfield, who developed tri-bike geometry back in the early 90s. He essentially looked at the way people were riding on air bars and said, let's make bikes differently to accommodate this. I have an earlier tri-bike right behind me here to point out those two key geometric differences between a road bike and a triathlon bike. Triathlon bike, the seat tube angle is steeper. That essentially moves the saddle forward in relationship to the bottom bracket. The second difference is the head tube on a triathlon bike tends to be shorter, and that will tend to lower the air bars relative to a typical road bike position. These changes bring about some misconceptions with triathlon bikes, those being that these bikes either stretch us out or bend us over really far. When utilized properly, those changes rotate the rider. With the bottom bracket being a focal point of the bike, the rider is like the hands on the face of a clock, rotating forward and down. The point of those changes is increased speed through improved aerodynamics. That is the sole purpose of a triathlon bike, to get you lower in the front so you can go faster through improved aerodynamics. So if you're not doing that, if that's not what you're after, or if you don't understand that, you may be better off on another bike, and that's perfectly okay. Let's get this bike out of the way and talk about what actually happens. What actually happens when you come in for a bike fit for me? I'm going to start off with what doesn't happen. I do not put you on a table and go through all your limbs and see how flexible they are and how far they can go and how strong you are. Because let's talk about one of the underlying principles of the FIST system of bike fitting, and that is bodies are smart and we trust them. Another principle is that the vast majority of people can achieve a world-class position on a triathlon or time trial bike. You won't go as fast as world-class riders, but you can ride the position, right? You have the athleticism, the strength, and the flexibility required to achieve the position. An example I'm going to use is hamstring flexibility and air bar drop, and for that I'm going to use one of my athletes. Mark North has donated his time here. Mark, I will tell you, he's not the most flexible guy, right? I am not the most flexible guy. In terms of touching your toes, I don't know if Mark can touch his toes or not, right? Mark cannot touch his toes. Nowhere close if he was to straighten the legs. But what Mark can probably do is keep his legs straight, bend over, touch the knees, right? Maybe a little bit below his knees, right? Now pretend you have air bars underneath, right? That is essentially the flexibility required to ride a very aggressive tri-bike position. There is no toe touching required. And all of those things, kind of play out in the bike fit. That if you actually don't have that much hamstring flexibility, it becomes really obvious. So there's no big body assessment because the athletic capabilities of the body in terms of strength and flexibility are actually pretty minimal to do this. So what is important, and you can probably step back just a bit so I can reference the bike again. What is important is the starting position on the bicycle. And before that, why do we use this bicycle and why don't we use that bicycle that I had on here before? Bike fitting is about your body. It is not about your bicycle. We are trying to derive what's called your bike fit DNA. That is some fit coordinates that will stay with you for most of your life, regardless of the bicycle you're on. So if you come in and we want to do a bike fit on your bicycle, two things will limit us. The adjustment range of the bicycle could limit us. It simply might not adjust to where you prefer, in which case we have no chance of actually finding out where you prefer. The second point is actually the more important one, and it's something called time between trials. Time between trials is exactly what it sounds like. How much time does it take to make an adjustment to the bike, get you back on so you can try and evaluate what's going on? On your bike, it might take a few seconds, a few minutes, or a few hours, depending on what we're changing. On a modern, dynamic fit bike, it happens as you ride. Our 4 main fit coordinates are adjustable as the rider pedals under load, allowing the process to be intuitive, and there's a back and forth between the rider. This is not a dictatorial process where I look at you and determine where you should be. I ask a series of questions, kind of similar to going to the eye doctor. Do you notice a difference? Is it better or worse? Is it more powerful or less powerful? Is it more comfortable or less comfortable? So as we do that, as we set the starting position of the bike and get into the bike fit proper, we want to be sure of one thing. Because this bike has basically infinite adjustability, we want to make sure that we're not creating something that doesn't exist in the real world of bikes. You can find a position that nobody actually makes a bike to accommodate. So we want to be real precise with where we start. And where we're going to start is with the most slack seat tube angle, the most rearward position of the seat that is commonly ridden by successful athletes. And your bike fit is going to take you from that slack or rearward position all the way forward to the steepest or the most forward position that is commonly ridden by successful triathletes. This is part of the bell curve stuff. We do not want to create outliers. Good technique on the bike is comparable to good high jumping technique. If you want to do the high jump as best as you can, you will emulate world-class technique. You will simply not jump as high. Same goes with positioning on a bicycle. If you want to do it as best as you can, you will emulate world-class technique. You are not a unique and beautiful snowflake. So we want to be sure of where we start so we can be sure of where we're going to finish. And somewhere in that range, we will find what is ideal for you. We'll work on the touch points of the bike. That's the seat, the pedals, and the handlebars before we get started with your fit proper. You might come in knowing exactly what you need, in which case we skip right over it. We put your seat, your pedals, your bars, and we proceed. Or we can spend a lot of time. We have a lot of different handlebars. We have every kind of pedal, and we have another little device that lets us really eliminate the time between trials, because the saddles on triathlon bikes are especially important. So that right there, to be able to change a saddle, you just stand up and we put a new one underneath you. So we get your starting position, we get your touch point set on the bike, and then we will briefly look at your knee tracking. Knee tracking could be a whole other video, right? 2 words, minimal intervention. Now, if your knees are going pretty much up and down, and you're not in pain, even importantly, we're probably not going to mess with it. If your knees aren't going up and down, and you're experiencing some pain and discomfort, we have all the cleats, wedges, shims, spacers, lasers, and plumb lines, and experience to use all those things to straighten you out, get you riding pain-free. You should be able to ride your bike pretty much forever, till your dying days. You know, unlike a sport like running, where it seems that eventually the body wears out from running. Bicycle riding should be something you can do forever, and we're definitely committed to pain-free riding for your entire life. Which finally brings us to the bike fit proper, or the heavy lifting. At this point, I'll go ahead and get back on the bike, Mark. The bike fit proper, or the heavy lifting, encompasses 4 primary fit coordinates. And I'm going to kind of go through those with Mark very quickly in the order we would do them during bike fit. So the rider will get on the bike and do a proper warm-up, and then they will be pedaling under load. Not super hard load, but enough to figure out what's going on. At which point, the handles start turning. We go up. We go down. We do it incrementally. We do it systematically, and we're asking for rider feedback the entire time. Mark, do you notice a difference? Mark, is it better or worse? We're asking the athlete to tune into their intuitive sense of how does pedaling feel. Do you notice that, Mark?
That's worse.
It's worse. But, so with seat height, we're going to go to the extreme ranges. We want you to experience way too high, way too low, and then we will find something in the middle that works for everybody. Once we derive seat height, we'll move to the front of the bike, how far the bars are away from the saddle. This is the primary driver of comfort on the bicycle. It is the primary reason that people are uncomfortable on the bicycle is because their handlebars are not the proper distance away from them. And you know, with that same thing, we're asking the rider to tune in to their intuitive sense of comfort on the bike, their ability to relax up here, to almost slouch down between the aero bars. So we've got seat height, we've got cockpit distance. Then we move on to drop. How low can you go? And this is one where that comfort and that ability to pedal kind of cross over, so we want to be really clear about what we're talking about. In this case, we're talking about the ability to pedal, right? So we will take Mark down until we are absolutely certain that we've destroyed his ability to pedal the bicycle. And then we will take him up and we will ask him, do you notice the difference? Is it better or worse? Is it better or worse? Are you more powerful or less powerful? We're going to get this rider right as low as they can without losing power and hopefully maintaining some comfort, which can be addressed otherwise. But as you notice, as we go through this, the primary driver is his answering my questions. He's setting his position. I'm confirming it with my eyeballs, and I'll confirm some body angles with the goniometer. But this is an athlete-driven process. You give yourself a bike fit, so you only have yourself to blame, right? Anyway, so we've got the seat height, we've got the reach to the bars, we've got the drop of the bars. Now, this is where we talked about taking Mark through that entire spectrum from the shallowest to the steepest seat tube angle. And this is the last primary fit coordinate, it's the saddle setback, where it is. But we have everything else done, so we're going to move Mark as a system through from shallow to steep. And he's going to choose where he finds his nexus of power, where he finds the balance of really being able to pedal the bike, be comfortable, and to sustain that for long periods of time. And anything that Mark has going on with his body that might be abnormal or limiting him will shake out in this process. Right? So pause. So those are the 4 primary fit corners, and there's some secondary stuff as well. The width of the bars, the angle of the bars, the length of the extensions, the crank length, right? That's something that we get into after the bike fit. Now I have a separate video on crank length, but in a nutshell, crank length, there's some misconceptions that it's a leverage issue. Crank length is not a leverage issue. It's a bike positioning tool. This is a lever, this is a lever, this is a lever. The gears are a lever, and the crank arm length is indeed a lever. So when you think about it that way, when we change the crank arm length from say 175 to 170, we're making a change of a few percentage points in one lever in a system of 5. So we have changed the leverage a little bit, of which you're free to change it back simply by shifting a gear. So then, we shake out the math on that. We've essentially done nothing to the leverage. What we have done is affect the top of the pedal stroke, right? Mark, hop off the bike for a second, Mark. Just kind of support yourself. Kind of give me that left leg up. So, and bend over a little bit. So at the top of Mark's pedal stroke, he has this hip angle right here. If we were to shorten the crank length so the foot's no longer there, it's actually lower, we open up this hip angle, right? So bring it up a little bit so you're at the top of your pedal stroke. So when we shorten the crank, we open up this angle right here. This angle can be a limiter for a lot of riders. But it's kind of a double whammy, because recall when we set the seat height, the way we confirm it is by measuring the knee angle. When we shorten the crank, we make that knee angle smaller, so we need to fix that by raising up the saddle by the same amount. So now when we look at that relationship at the top of the pedal stroke, not only is the foot down further, opening up that hip angle, the seat's up higher, which further opens up that hip angle. So small changes to crank length equate to big changes in that hip angle at the top of the pedal stroke, which can really open up the pedaling, and then gives you options, right? The option that you can take is to simply feel better about riding your bike. The option we try and get you to take is, once we have opened that angle up, let's drop the front end of the bike a little bit more and close that angle back down, because you've already chosen it to be acceptable. We shorten the crank and we make it better, but maybe what we really should do is lower the front end down and give you more speed through increased aerodynamics. We're almost done. The next step of the bike fitting process is something that you might need an hour or 30 seconds. This is an aerodynamic assessment, and that's where we look at your wheels, your tires, your tubes, where you put your nutrition, where you put your spares, how you route your cables, your helmet, your clothing, all the accessories we might look at. Everything that goes on your bike that can slow you down, we want to address that. You might be perfect in that regard, or you might be a disaster. So hard to say how long that will take, but that is something that's included in the bike fit. We're done. What do you get? You get information. there are two main categories of information that you're going to get from your bike fit. Every bike fit in the world, no matter who does it to you, should come with fit coordinates. Right? That is the numbers. That is how high the seat is, how far the bars are, how low the bars are, where the saddle is, the width, the angle, the length, the crank length, the pedals you use. Those are your fit coordinates. Those are how to set up any bike in the world to your bike fit. That's a bare minimum. Really, in this modern day and age, with the equipment that's being used and the prices that are being charged, you need to demand of your bike fitter something called complete bike solutions. Complete Bike Solutions is not, hey, yeah, Mark, get a 54, I'll see you later. Complete Bike Solution is a medium specialized shiv with an 11 centimeter, 17 degree stem and 7 centimeters of spacers. It's not, hey, go buy a 58. It's a 58 centimeter Trek Madone with a medium head tube, an 11 centimeter stem, 3 centimeters of spacers, and FSA short and shallow handlebars. There's information that when you put those parts together in that order, will replicate this position exactly. Fit coordinates are a bare minimum. Complete Bike Solutions is really going the extra yard and giving a full and professional bike fit. Thanks for looking. This was a pretty long video. I'm going to give information in the credits regarding how to contact me, phone number, email address, website. If you have questions about any of this, feel free to back it up and watch it again. Thank you for your time.